Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and I'm actually very happy today because I have finally been able to end the debate on what is the easiest and hardest server in World of Tanks Blitz. In front of me, I have a website called beastworldoftanks.com. Anybody can access this website. And what's great about this website is that it shows you server stats and it compares your statistics to the server's statistics. So we can see, for example, this here is the European server. You can see EU rate at the top. I can even reload the page so you can see I haven't messed with anything. This is the European server. And it shows you the average win rate of the European server. It shows you the average damage of the European server. Every single stat that you'd want to see. How many games it takes for the average player to master a tank, the average damage a European player's deal. It shows you everything. And some people might think, oh, well, does, using a different account mess with these stats? No, if I type in player and we do this random account here, you'll see that all of these stats are still the exact same. So this website shows me the average win rate and everything of the EU server and the NA server. And with these statistics, we are finally able to prove that the European server is simply easier to deal damage and get victories on versus the NA server. This has previously been a debate of opinion, right? I have always been opinionated on how I feel. I've always said I think it's easier to deal damage on Europe. But there's many European players who have said that's not true, blah, blah, blah. They've gotten mad at me. They've made insults. Well, today we can simply prove through factual statistics that the European server is easier to deal damage on. Anybody that wants to disagree with what I'm saying here, simply prove it, because now we have statistics that prove my argument. And your stats and your performance means nothing when I have the actual server stats and factual proof that the European server is easier to deal damage on. But this has been a debate for years, so I'm so happy that I've finally been able to find a website that actually shows the differences between the two servers. With that being said, what I've done is I've actually screenshotted the server statistics and sent them to ChatGPT. This way, you have an unbiased opinion, which is telling you exactly how the server stats work and which of the servers is easier to play on. And even better than that, I can show you exactly what I typed. At the top, I said, this first picture is of the NA server stats. Make sure you don't look at mine, just where it says server. So obviously, ChatGPT looked at this, looked at the 56.74, all of these stats here, and then it wrote them down. So the average win rate of an NA player is 56.74. I was actually surprised it was this high. That's pretty shocking, not gonna lie. The average kills per game, which is frags, is 1. The spotted rate is 1.22, so that means the average amount of tanks an enemy or player spots. Survival rate is 41%. Remaining HP after the game ends is 24%. Damage ratio of 1.4. Average damage per game is 1650. Average damage received is 1162. And the amount of games it takes for the average North American player to get a mastery badge is 67. 28 for a mastery badge class 1, and then 9 and 5 for a 2 and 3. Then what I did is I screenshotted the European server and told ChatGPT once again, this is the EU server. It has then copied down all of these statistics we can see here. The average win rate on the European server is 54.75, meaning that the average player on America or the NA server is doing 2% higher in terms of win rate versus the European player. Average frags is 0.89. The average spot rate is 1.17. Every single value you'll notice is lower on Europe. The average remaining HP is 4% less. The damage ratio is 0.2 less. Average damage per game is less. The average damage received is higher. And the battles to mastery is doubled. The amount of games it takes to master a tank is 67 on NA and 136 on EU. So what I did is I said, what server is harder to deal damage on and win if you're a skilled player from these stats, right? Because being a skilled player, you have to fight higher win rate, higher spot rate, higher survival rate on the NA server versus the EU server. So what ChatGPT did, and you can see I didn't tell it to have any bias here. I didn't tell it to do anything wonky. I simply just told it unbiased what is the best. So looking at the two sets of stats side by side, here's what stands out. Win rate, average player, NA 56.74%, EU 54.75. NA has a higher average win rate, meaning that European players win less on average. This could hint at more uneven teams or slightly less coordinated play overall on EU, which might make winning easier for a skilled player there. Average damage, 1650 versus 1590. NA players do slightly more damage on average, so EU enemies tend to take less damage per match. This could mean that they die faster or deal less damage back. Damage ratio, NA 1.4 versus the EU's 1.25. Oh, sorry, my voice died there. NA players survive longer relative to the damage they deal, which makes it harder for a skilled player to farm high damage against them. Survival rate, NA 40.72, EU 36.39. NA players survive more often, which generally makes damage farming harder than in EU, where players die quicker and it might be easier to farm damage from. Conclusion. Harder to deal damage, NA. Players survive longer, deal more damage, and have a higher damage ratio. So there's more competition for damage and tougher targets to crack. Harder to win, NA. The average win rate suggests stronger team play or more resistance, so carrying might require more effort. If you're a skilled player, EU will be easier for both winning and damage farming, while NA will give you tougher matches in both respects. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot argue with me. You have to argue with ChatGPT on this because it has simply analyzed both of the statistics and told you exactly the truth. And this is what I've been saying for years. I know that there's still going to be European players that look at this and say that's bogus, but you are simply saying that's bogus to factual statistics. It says it, and it's not even just factual statistics. I myself have done 5 live streams now on the European server, and those 5 live streams I averaged over 4,000 damage on every single one. And before you say, oh, that account was on Noob Matchmaking, it wasn't, because I actually spent over $100 on an account with 30,000 games specifically so I wouldn't get Noob Matchmaking. Yesterday alone, I was doing a T57 heavy stream, and that stream made me legitimately want to die. I was playing on the NA server. We lost 7 matches in a row while averaging over 3,700 average damage. Then I swapped over to my EU account, which also has the T57 heavy. I won 9 games in a row, lost 1 battle, averaged over 4,300 damage in those games. And it really just shows right here that the stats, the facts, everything align. And this is exactly how I have felt for years. If you guys would like me to do a comparison on the Asia server as well, let me know. I don't know if the site does the Asia server. I'd have to get an Asian account name and see. But I would be interested to see how the average Asia player compares to NA and EU, exactly what is the hardest server to perform on. But I can tell you for a fact that the European server is simply the easiest to deal damage on. And at this point, it's no longer a controversy. It's no longer a debate. It is myth busted. So if you want to see more videos like this in the future, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.